had a mashgiach in yeshiva who used to say, like in the middle of the summer, he would say, Bachrim, I'm telling you, El is coming. El is coming. And this was like almost like a joke. It went on the whole of El is coming and El is coming. And it actually started Tammuz. Finally, when it came Rosh Chodesh El, he would walk into the Beis Medrash, look at us and said, I told you it was coming. Never quite knew what to do with it exactly. I always said that the Maimer Ha'olam is that even the fish in the water shiver on El. So there was this mashgiach, he's trying to wake up a bacher, and he's telling him, on El, you're having such a hard time getting up. He says, you don't know that even the fish in the water shiver on El. So he explained that if he was in the water, he would also shiver. But if the fish was under the warm blanket, then perhaps they would not be shivering. To try to understand it a little better, of how we can connect to it. There's a famous Chayvus Halvavis. The Chayvus Halvavis says that when a baby grows up, or as a baby begins to mature and develop and comes into contact with the environment that is around him, so his concept of what he bases his life on begins narrow and slowly starts to expand. For example, the baby in the first days of life only knows the nipple. He doesn't even know the bottle. He doesn't even know his mother. He only knows the nipple, because that's the only thing that he feels or possibly sees. And he knows when he's hungry that that's what he or she needs. So there's really only one thing in life, and that is the nipple. As he begins to get older and understands more, he realizes that there is something else besides the nipple. There is his mother. Right? So his mother is everything. And he feels the warmth of his mother's embrace, and so on. And he understands that with the mother comes food. So that's his whole life. At this point of the game, his father has very little, not much in the life of an infant, even though the father is still paying up the bills from the kiddush. But he doesn't know that, or she. Now, as the child gets older, the child begins to realize that there is a father also. He now knows mother, father. That's basically the life of the child. The child gets even older, so he is introduced to the concept of money. He now knows there are different things. There's mother, and there's father, and there is money. In some instances, the money replaces his mother and father, depending on what that particular situation is. Then as he gets older, there's taiva, and there's kavod, and at one point he has to make a decision when he realizes that all of this, the nipple, the mother, the father, the mother, the kavod, the money, that it's all B'orei Olam. But that, depending on how mature you are, it takes until you reach that point. In a sense, along a similar vein, the Kotzker Rebbe said, we've mentioned it many times, that the Mishnah says, Kina taiva v'kavod, v'tzinas adam min ha'olam. Jealousy, thank you, temptation and kavod take a person out of this world. So there's a cycle, says the Kotzker Rebbe. Generally, in the first trimester of your life, the battle is with taiva. That's not to say that there's no jealousy and no kavod. In the middle trimester of your life, the taiva begins to diminish somewhat, and the kinna, the jealousy, takes over. You know, my brother-in-law did this shidduch, and I got to do at least that much of a shidduch, and there's the pressure of keeping up with your neighbor's marble, and the guy that had plans to build a 5-story house and said he's going down to 4, because he has Rahmanas on his neighbor. He knows he will not be able to afford a 5th floor, and if he builds a 5, the guy will have to have 6. Toward the end of your life, it's kavod. You know, this person didn't say Shalom Aleichem to me. This person I didn't sit even on. This person didn't give me the right respect, and I was sitting by the table. So there's different phases in the course of our lives of what we think determines who we are. And it's important for a person to recognize those different phases. I try to think back in terms of Sukkot. I know I think about Sukkot now, but that's a good thing to think of. I remember as a kid helping my father make the sukkah. I remember it was very exciting. As the years went by, so I remember even after getting married and then going to my father to help build a sukkah, put the schach on. And then when it was time for me to buy my own sukkah, I remember my first sukkah, how excited we were buying it. I thought I was only going to have 2 walls and somehow connected to a neighbor's brick wall. and they had hanged the Schachter on it, even though I never really figured out how you bang nails into a brick wall. Maybe Menachem can help me here. Someone, I don't know. But I said, it'll hold probably till after Yom Tif. And I remember asking permission from my neighbor, but then he came screaming that all of his dishes fell off the shelf right now as I was banging away. And I said, all right, so, forget it. He says, no, don't forget it. I'm just telling you, I just want to let you know that all my dishes fell off the wall. So then I put all the Schachter on, and blessedly, HaKadosh Baruch Hu did a big chesed for me that the beam with the Schachter against the brick wall came crashing down on Erev Sukkot as opposed to the first day Sukkot, which gave me a chance to run back to the Sukkah place and buy the third and fourth wall to my Sukkah. So I remember that year we put it all together, and the next year my little kids, helping me put it together. And as we got older, I didn't really have so much time or patience, and I couldn't figure it out. My kids began to do it. Then as we got even older, my kids would say to me, Tal, in a very nice way, can you get out of the way so we can finish the sukkah? And for years, it was always a different kid that finished the sukkah because they were off, to yeshiva and learn. And then it got to a point where all my sons got married, and I was left alone building the sukkah. And I would have to ask the matayva to come. As I remember how to do this, it was who knows how many years ago. So now, at the point where it's like my einiklach come over to try to help. And so Bank is this saying Zaidi, can you step aside so we can finish this? So it gets even harder. But the truth is, it changes. Life changes. And as life changes, it's so important for us to adapt. And money really means totally something else for a kid. Basically, for a kid, money means nash. That's what it is. When you get older, it means different things depending on what particular circle you're in. When you're a younger man, money means, different things. And of course, at one point, there's cars for a long while. And when you're middle-aged, money means status, and it means different things. And then when you get to a certain age, money is, that you change your will 10,000 times because you're angry at this kid and angry at this cousin. So the money becomes, who are you leaving it to? So basically, it's not the same money throughout your life. It continues to change. And I once heard of art. That's why where in Shmona Esrei do we ask for money? We say, Baruch Ata Hashem, Mevarech Hashanim, right? Baruch Aleinu. So why Mevarech Hashanim? Should be Mevarech Parnasa. I should take out my dollar and say, God bless this, right? Mevarech $1. Why is it Mevarech Hashanim? I've told you many times about the person that came to this Chacham and said his Parnasa is in trouble, so he said, I'll give you a dollar and I'm going to bench it, a lucky coin. And he said, what's this? He said, it's a blessed dollar. He says, maybe you have a cursed 100, I could use that a little more. Okay. So, Pashtus, it's Mevarech Hashanim because, right, they had an agricultural society, and if there was a bracha in the Shanim, in the agriculture, in the year, so there was a bracha in the entire economy, and as a drought takes over America, and, you're going to see your gas prices go up, it doesn't hit us today. Drought, that's what chumash, raw, we don't corn, what is it? I'm paying more for gas. Oh, yeah, drought, I give out, fast, behind the sivir, right? Those someone that touches me, the world changes. Okay, so according to this, so Mevarech Hashanim, as it is synonymous with Parnasa, would pertain only to an agricultural economy. But in our economy, which is essentially a service economy and so on, so l'chayra, what's the connection to Mevarech Hashanim? Clearly, the Anshe Knesset Gedola, when they put Shmona Esrei into place, they meant it into the generations. And they once said a beautiful vart. In order to have the bracha of money, you have to understand who you are. You have to understand what money means to you as a 20-year-old, what it means to you as a 30-year-old, what it means to you when you're middle-aged, what it means to you when you get older. You have to have an appreciation for it, an understanding for it. I once took my mother, Olel Hashalem, we went to Philadelphia to a doctor, I think, and he was an 80-year-old surgeon. And everyone came for his advice, and he was an amazing surgeon, even at that age. And he laughed. He told me, I think, I don't remember correctly, maybe I have my facts wrong, but in the state of Pennsylvania, you have to surrender your license when you turn 80 years old. So he said, I can still do open heart surgery, but I can't drive around the block. So again, there's certain adaptations, there's certain assumptions at a certain age. But if we live our lives right, it's a bracha, as money changes from phase to phase. And that's the bracha of Mevarech Hashanim. So there was a story in Bnei Brak, which I heard, from a Yid by the name of Rabbi Avram Rechamkin. He has a grocery for many, many years. And he said that this week, 2 Bachrim came in, real quickly, gave him an envelope, and disappeared. And he opened up the envelope, and inside, no bomb, no powder, but there was a letter. And the letter said that a certain Bachrim, when he was a little boy, used to help himself to the candies. If you ever notice in all the groceries and the supermarkets, the candies are very low for kids to grab it. So they'll say, no, put it back, no, put it back. Oh, you took it, I have to pay for it, right? So really, it's like not really fair. But in any event, so this kid felt guilty that he stole candies when he was little. So he gave the grocery person a check for 300 shkolim. As you can imagine, he took a lot of chocolate and candies. So this guy's saying, he doesn't know if it was those two bachrim, but they came in for a friend. He wasn't quite sure, it's not me, it was my friend. I'm paying up for my friend, how it goes. Somebody once came to the Rav Shitz, he says, my friend is bad machshavas, doesn't know what to do. He says, why don't you tell your friend to come? He says, he's embarrassed. He says, I have an idea. He says, tell your friend, come and say that he has a friend, okay? Good idea, right? So, this grocery man said that he once had it, that he came to a wedding, and the chassan under the chuppah sees him, and turns red, and hold off, and he steps out for a minute and whispers something into someone's ear, and somebody comes over to him and says, when he was a kid, he stole candies from your store, can you please be machlim before his chuppah? So the question is why. I always say that English teachers, I always tell my kids before the chuppah, call up your English teachers and ask mechila. I remember what we did to them, So at least I don't want to go into the chuppah that way. I'd rather have someone. He was an entire year in the yeshiva, as an English teacher for many, many years. But he said that more than once a chassan called him the day before to ask him mechila. Right. One teacher I called to ask mechila, actually. We had a shopping cart, and the fire extinguisher was put into it, and we turned it on and sent it into the room, spritzing around and around. That was a good one. That was a good one, Grab. But in any event, I remember one of my rebbeim once told me, "Ein azis panim lemechza." Okay, you can't be a half a mechutza. If you're not a mensch by English, then you're not a mensch to the Rebbeinu Shalom. So the question is, being that these boys sent back the envelope with the money, what was it in their life that they decided right now I better make up for those candies that I sent? Now, of course, the person always has to make a cheshbon and nefesh. The Rebbe Rav Zisha did tshuva that he was a young baby and he was nursing, that he banged, may have banged his mother. So I guess the higher you are, the more, in retrospect, you think into the inyanim in their life. But I was wondering, I have no clue. This is just speculation. But why did those bachrim decide now to send the envelope with the money? Could be they became chasanim, or it could be they were not becoming chasanim. Could be they heard some drasha about Geneva. But sometimes we reach a phase in our life where we begin to look back and say, I have to reevaluate. I got to reevaluate where I am. I want to take this a step further, Rabbi say, and try to explain this. There is a problem that the Gemara deals with, and to a certain degree, the Paiskin and the Mefarshim deal with it. On the one hand, it says that Adam nidain b'chal yan, that a person is judged every single day. There's even an opinion in the Gemara, Adam nidain b'chal shah, a person is judged every single hour. And we know there's different dinim, that each one has obviously a certain phase in the assessment of a person. There's a din every time you go to sleep. There is a din when the person goes up to Shemayim. As I have told you many, many times, Rosh Hashanah used to say that when somebody was snoring in the middle of his drasha, he said that that's a covet, he said. Because what happens is, he says, imagine he's giving a drasha and all of a sudden the shama goes up to be judged. He say, where are you coming from? He said, Rav Schwab's drasha. 2 seconds later, another neshama, where are you coming from? Schwab's drasha. 3 seconds later, another neshama. Say, how many people are by this drasha already? Wow, this is amazing. Okay. So now, when you go to sleep at night, you are judged. Okay? Rosh Hashanah, Erev Shabbos, there's a judgment. Rosh Hashanah, there's a judgment. After 120 years, there's a judgment. La'es Techiyah by Techiyas HaMesim, there's a judgment. Every year on the day of the yard site, there is a judgment. So there's a question. Rabbi Yossi, who holds Adam Nidan B'chal Yayim, so he doesn't hold your judge in Rosh Hashanah. And the Turi Even asks Akasha, he says, we don't say Hal on Rosh Hashanah. Why do we not say Hal on Rosh Hashanah? Because the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Sifrei Chaim, Sifrei Mesim, Menachem Lefanecha. You have the Svarim of the people that are alive, Svarim of the people that are dead. Life and death is being decided. It's a time to say Hal. We don't say Hal. Frek the Turi Even. Well, according to Rabbi Yossi, Adam Nidan B'chal Yayim. Every single day a person is judged. So we should never say Hal. So there's a famous word from the Baal Shem Tov. There was the famous story, we've mentioned it many times. The Baal Shem Tov once came to when he was still hidden, he wasn't revealed yet, and the town water carrier is walking up the stairs, and he walks in and he collapses. He says, I'm so old, I can't schlep the water anymore. I thought I'm going to retire. My son-in-law died. I have to now support my daughter and her children, and the house is so noisy. I'm getting older. I have no kayak. How am I going to do this? The younger water carriers get there quicker and faster than I do. And he burst into tears. There's no hope for me. There's nothing can happen to change my lot, to make it better. And the Baal Shem Tov began to cry with him. What could he tell him? And the next day he came in and he was dancing, singing. The water is splashing all over the place. What are you so happy? What happened? You won the lottery? Your son-in-law, he says, no. He says he began to think how many people his age are in rocking chairs and I don't know what's going on. And I'm Baruch Hashem with all my faculties. I know what's doing and I can schlep the water. And some people, their house is so quiet. They're so lonely of me. There's kids running around. He says, I got to thank Hashem for all the good things in my life. So Baal Shem Tov started dancing with him. He said, now I understand. He says, Rosh Hashanah, it's the side attacker who lives, who dies. But the quality of life, the ability of being able to go on with life and to see the good in life and to enjoy life, that is Adam Nidin B'chol Yom, or perhaps Adam Nidin B'chol Shah. That's a special bracha every single hour. Somebody told me that, very chashuv yid, that a person went into the Ger Rebbe's Lazayn Gesund and Stark, and he said the tzaras that he had, the health issues and the money issues and the parnasa issues and the children, the tsar gidul banim, and what was going on in his house, you could cry for this person. It was almost Eve the second. And he said, Rebbe, what's going to be? So the Rebbe said, I want you to do something for me, okay? And then come back to me and we'll discuss it. He said, for the next 5 days, every single night, I want you and your Rebbetzin to sit down, take out a notebook, reflect on your life, and write down 5 good things that happened to you in your life. And come back to me, with 25 things. But it has to be broken up in this way. And he came back 5 days later, and there was a big smile on his face, and he says, Rebbe, me and my wife, we decided, Baruch Hashem, we can deal with it. Things aren't so bad. The ability to be able to see the bracha in your life, it's a siyata d'shmaya. You have to work on it. Adam nidin b'chol yom. That's every single day. But I want to approach a different nekuda. I don't want to go into how old anyone is over here, but in my days, when you wanted to weigh yourself, meaning to say how much you weigh, so the drugstores used to have this scale, okay? And if you remember it, it was like a thing on the floor, and it was a long, tall thing. Okay, we're not going to see who's smiling over here. We're not going to. Okay, don't worry, the camera's only pointing at me. And on top, it looked a little bit like a parking meter, but much bigger. And on top, it had the arrow went back and forth, and you had to put in a nickel or a dime, and you stood on it, and it gave you your weight. So the way it went is you stood on it, with your shoes, without your shoes, a whole chakira, before lunch, after lunch, and you took out your nickel, and you put it in, and it made a lot of noise, and the needle would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth until it would settle by your weight. So you would watch it go, no, yeah, 280. Oh boy, That's how it was. You were it went back and forth, the final score is, so in a sense, it was, I remember I had a friend, he used to get on and jump off right away. Because he said, then it always says, the longer you stand on it, it's not good, he said. So in a way, it's back and forth. It's like counting your portions, It's did he eat the kugel? No, he did. No, he did. Well, he did. He didn't. He did. That's so extra fat. What? It was? Until it decides. It takes in your whole week until it decides where exactly you are and what the bottom number is. There is a difference, this is what some of the Mefarshim say, between the Adam Nidin B'chol Shah or B'chol Yom as opposed to the din of Rosh Hashanah. Before we go to sleep every single night, Yerushalayim Chaim HaKadosh discusses this in Parasha Reeh. But basically, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes all of our mitzvahs throughout the day, all of the Barchiva Shemay Amenes, all of the Amen Yehei Shemay Rabbis, all of the tzedakahs, all of the nice smile that you gave your wife, your husband, your shliger, your shver, your son, whatever it is, your talmidim, your rebbeim, your co-workers, the Kiddush Hashem that you made, the Limud Torah, and it gets deposited in the bank. Says the Yerushalayim Chaim HaKadosh, that is a gift, so you shouldn't lose it. Right? 2 people walking on the street, and there's a mugger coming toward them, and he takes out a gun, and Reuben and Shimon look at each other. Reuben says to Shimon, the $5,000 I owe you? Yeah? He says, here it is. Right? So what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for us is because we can have mitzvahs and we can lose it, So therefore, the Rabbi Shalom gives us every single night an ability to deposit it in the bank. It stays there. The other thing that gets deposited at night are your averos, unfortunately. And that gets registered. That's every single day. So basically, if you can think of the analogy on the scale between mitzvahs and averos, the needle's going back and forth every single night. Mitzvahs, averos, mitzvahs, averos, mitzvahs, averos. Comes Rosh Hashanah, that's when everything gets counted up. Okay? And it comes to the bottom line, this is who you are. Rosh Hashanah time, it's when you're getting on the scale, off the scale the entire year. And it's going back and forth. Rosh Hashanah, the needle comes to an end and says, this is where you are. And that's why right before Elul, or Elul time, before Rosh Hashanah, is we know the needle is going to come to an end now. And it's going to get to a certain point. Now, Chazal say when a person is over in Aveira, so you feel guilty about it, and you're not in a very good mood, and you feel so bad, and you're going to do tshuva. And eventually was the last time. And then the next day when you do the Aveira again, you don't feel so guilty about it, and you think one day you're going to do tshuva, and you say to Rabbi Shalom, probably the last time. And basically the Gemara says, you're over Aveira, and you repeat the Aveira, nasa like keheter. It becomes like, eventually it's mutter. You have no guilty conscience at all. Says the Kotzka, and eventually what happens? Eventually it gets worse. It becomes a mitzvah. You know? I mean, it's L'Shem Shemayim that I'm doing this. So, what happens is, Rosh Hashanah time, is there's an assessment not only on the mitzvahs or the aveiros that you did, but there's an assessment on what kind of a person are you. If Ruvain does an aveira on Sunday, he still has a guilty conscience. If he does the aveira on Monday, it's not like he did the aveira twice. It's already nasa like keheter. When he does the aveira on Tuesday, it's worse. It's already a mitzvah of him to do the aveira. So if you take any given Tuesday, and you see Ruvain doing aveira A, and Shimon doing aveira A, even though they're both doing the same aveira, for Ruvain it's a much more serious issue. So Adam Nidin B'chal Yom in terms of the aveira. And Rosh Hashanah it's established, you did this so many times that you're now, where are you? It's a different mitzias. Your mahus is different. If a judge is judging someone, so he looks at the previous record, why should he be more harsh with someone that has a previous record? So there's two svaras. One is he's more likely to repeat it, so therefore he has to be taken off the street. Or at the point that he's a repeat offender, it becomes part of his mahus. It's his mitzias, it's his nature, it's his essence. And that's what we want to stay away from. So Adam Nidain B'chal Yom as to whether there's a count, a mitzvah or a aveira. In this month of El, it's now decided, did you happen to do an aveira? Or are you an aveira? Are you an aveira person? You know, this guy comes to the judge and the judge says, you know why you're here? He says, no. The judge says, for drinking. He says, okay, when do we start? Some people just don't quite get it at the point. We don't even chap anymore what we did. So in the story, a person calls up his mother and says, Ma, how are you feeling? And the mother says, I'm very weak. Why? Been fasting now 33 days. Why are you fasting 33 days, Ma? Because I'm so scared that you're just going to call when my mouth is full. Okay? In other words, you haven't called for 33 days. So it's not pshat that each day is a separate day he didn't call. It's now a whole month that he didn't call. So that's what happens on Elul. That's what happens Rosh Hashanah. That doesn't happen. It's a much more comprehensive time. Now the Bnei Yissaschar says that the word Elul comes from the word to spy. Ma'al, the Meraglim. You see the lashon of the Targum, Ma'alim Alulim. We're spying into who we are. Right? If Mr. Romney, Governor Romney, whoever you want to call him, he had to pick a vice presidential candidate. So he had boiled it down to 4 or 5 people that thought Nebuch they were going to be vice president. So each one had to go through a whole process. They had to give their tax returns, they had to give their library cards, they had to give their pre-1A coloring flowers, you know, they went through their whole history from day to one to see who they are. We got to see who you are. We got to see who your mahus is, because if we don't find it, the enemy for sure is going to find it. Right? There's a debate. The president gives a debate. So how do they get the president to practice with a debate? So I read this someplace. They take the meanest, toughest guy, and they make this whole spiel. He stands, they watch, then he stands, but the other stand. They ask the president the toughest questions, and this guy goes after him. So you're going to say, he has no derech eretz. How do you talk to the president that way? But he does have derech eretz. That's the biggest taiva he's doing for the president. That during the month of Elul, where there's this debate. We have to debate ourselves and ask ourselves the tough questions. Who are we? Okay. So what do I do? So I once read this. I've mentioned this, I know, many times. I heard an interview with a very big political consultant, and he said when he deals with a candidate, the first thing he tells him is, tell me all your chatoim, avoinus u'pesha. Tell me what you did. You hired a nanny without paying tax. You did whatever, the gimel averos chamuras. Tell it to me. He says, what are you going to do with the information? He says, I'm going to put it out. You do that? That's what I'm paying you for? He says, yeah. Because if you have that chet, trust me, the other party is going to find out about it. And they're going to wait till the day before the election. It's going to be a big shocker. So let me put it out now. Everyone gets used to it. It's nicht gefährlich. So he said, really, that's the Indian of El also. You know what I mean? You come out with it right away. This is my chet. This is who I am. Let it not be a shock before Rosh Hashanah. We can deal with it once the situation is there. So suppose I look back at this past year and I say, I say, I know how I blew it. So now great. So what am I supposed to do? I'm being judged. So I ate all that kugel. I'm getting on the scale. It's going like this. There's nothing I could do. I can't get it out of my stomach. What do I do? And the answer is that there are eitzos. And let's talk a little bit about some of those eitzos. Tonight is Rav Palm's yahrzeit. You know, there's a famous story that Rav Palm, once there was a yid davened in yeshiva. It wasn't a talmud. He just davened in the beis medrash. And when they told Rav Palm he's in the hospital, so he was a kohen. He couldn't go to the hospital. So he wrote him a few words. You know, miss you, hope you'll be back. And when the man brought him the letter, he was so... Rosh Hashiva wrote me a letter. They told Rav Palm, it's 2 weeks now, and he keeps mentioning the letter. Somebody would come and he would say, you pass me the orange juice. It's behind the letter that the Rosh Hashiva wrote me. Like, whoever somebody would come and he said, you know, is my hat still there? It should be near the letter that Rosh Hashiva wrote me. You know, like, he just kept... Did I mention Rosh Hashiva wrote me a letter? Yes, 10,000 times last minute. Yes. So they told Rav Palm about this. Rav Palm began to cry. He said, if with such a narishkeit you can make someone so happy, then what a taina, what an achrayus it is upon all of us. That what can we do that makes someone's life a little bit easier? Now, I want to say a few stories now and then do a tzad hashav here, do a golden thread and run through it to create the mehus of the person. A friend of mine was volunteering, was a younger man, he was volunteering for certain things, in chesed, and he came to Rav Palm, and he mentioned to Rav Palm he's doing these chesed in Yonim. Rav Palm said, very nice. Rav Palm asked him if he was getting paid for it. He said, no, they offered me money. I said, no, I'm a tzaddik. So Rav Palm said to him, knowing who this person was, don't you owe your grocery money? Don't you owe money to the yeshivas for your tuition? He says, yeah. So in other words, you're being frum on someone else's cheshbon. You want to be a tzaddik, you're doing the chesed l'shem chesed, and therefore they're not getting paid. Who says that? That's what you're supposed to do. So do you understand the mentality over here? Most of us look at an isolated thing. Oh, I'm doing chesed, I'm not charging. Palm says, after 120 years, what's your life going to look like? You volunteered and you left chaydas? I once, had an offer. And this was in Koil life. We're going to change my whole Koil life in terms of financially. Somebody wanted to put big money into this. He had an idea. It was take like the prakim, they learn in yeshiva, and he would make plays, like Elam Metzias. To be a big play, like a whole dance, choreography, what's it called, the dancers, or car or something, whatever. And, be hired with cameras, and it was going to be like, Elam Metzias, the guy's going to drop the apples, going to roll in all different directions, you're going to see actors running from all over, and someone's going to write the script, and it's going to be mamish, it's going to be such living color, there's going to be music in the background, and we're going to build this whole thing, you're going to watch this, mamish, it'll be so exciting. It's going to compete with all the things the kids watch, and I was offered a very lucrative, at least for then it was very lucrative for me, a very lucrative amount of getting into this, and I was really excited about it. And I was driving Rav Palm home from a chasana, and I incidentally mentioned it to him. And he looked at me and said, that's not how the kedusha of Torah is going to be transmitted from generation to generation. Taking the Gemara, and he didn't use that lashon, but basically he said, taking the Gemara and turning it into a Broadway show is not going to do it. You want the Rebbe wants to be animated and be excited, fine. But to take the whole Gemara and turn it into a movie, suffice it to say, there went my vacation that year. And all the other things, which probably would have not worked anyway if it was against Das Torah. It never took off, that project, anyway. But I realized how Rav Palm looked at something. Where is this in the course of... It's exciting, and there's money, and it's gewaldic, and you're a tzaddik, and you're learning. In the course of generations, from one generation to the other, is the Rebbeinu Shalom going to be happy with this or not? It's a much wider look. It's a much more of a panoramic look, a much more of a profile, right? It's you see things. You don't just see, you're not tunnel vision. You see where you're coming from and you see where you're going. It's not just what your weight is today. At the end of the year, where is your weight going to be? It's a whole different look at life. The Rabbi once told Rav Palm, he gets burnt out. He's burnt out. Rav Palm said, doesn't understand how he can be burnt out. He said the Rosh Yeshiva also taught many years. He said, if you teach the Gemara, you get burnt out. If you teach Talmidim, it's new Talmidim every single year. And that wasn't just a sprach. That was the way you said it. Rav Palm used to go, be Masada Kedushim to Muncie, to every single night. And once a week he didn't go because he had a Tuesday night shir. Somebody once said, after a while you get sick of this, every single night, again and again and again. You come all smiles to the chuppah, right, again, and standing there. So Rav Palm said, what do you mean? But the boy's only getting married once, hopefully. For him, it's only once in his life. So I don't look at it in terms of me. I look at it in terms of him. I've very, very often told you the story, just to bring out the point, that his chavrus left him, and he was a young bacher. He was here in America. He had nobody. He said he went into Brownsville, into a shul. He was never so lonely in his life in those years. There was no one he could talk to. His two chavrusas went to Europe to learn in the Mir. He said he took out a Yeridea, and he sat there 7-8 hours straight, from morning to night at some shul in Brownsville. Rav Palm taught every single class. The last years of his life, he gave the smicha shir and taught Yeridea. He said he was sure that Torah was the one he learned with the greatest Mesiras Nefesh, and therefore that's the crown jewel that would come to greet him before he leaves this world. That's how he understood it. What does that mean, Mesiras Nefesh? It means when he wasn't in the mood of learning. When he said, I'm finished, that's it, I have no friends here, I have no one that has any shachas to learning, I'm all alone in America where the stones are traced, there's no one to talk to, I give up. He didn't give up. He said, I keep going. And that's what comes to greet you. So what happens is we have opportunities in life. Even though, if you ate a kugel every single day, or you ate, I remember in yeshiva, one of the Rabbeim came in and said, I'll eat before davening. So he said, how many? Because we drink before davening. Fine, drink. So we had this guy that was drinking chont before davening. So he put it into a cup, so it became mutter, right? But you get on the scale, it's going to show, the chont's going to show whether he drank it or ate it. So it comes, when? What am I going to do? I can't hide my weight. There is a way to hide your weight. If there is that moment in your life you feel like giving up, and you're not in the mood of going further, and you take out the Yeridea, the Rebbeinu Shalom says, knock off 100 pounds, knock off 200 pounds. This is the crown jewel of his life. Rav Palm, all of his life, never sat even on in the Beis Medrash. He sat in the center of the Beis HaMedrash. And the Meshgiach L'Zayin Gesund, the Baal Mechaim L'Chaim once touched it up. There's a minig when the Baal Tefillah starts Hamelach. So he starts it from his seat and then he walks up to the Amid. Because real Malchus is not when you're standing in front saying, who's looking at me? Real Malchus is, I'm in between everybody. The Rav Palm was known for his Midas HaEmes. He once was found standing on the highway, on the Belt Parkway. Why? Because he took a yellow cab, and when the guy said, hey Rabbi, we closed the meter, we'll make a deal, $20. And Rav Palm said, no, turn on the meter. He said, well, now I can't, because it's not going to make any sense anymore. He said, well, let me out. And he let him out. So Rav Palm always felt that 99% of the truth is 100% false. That there's only one emes. There's one emes. And when he was very old, and he lost 90% of his bone mass, and he had a shopping cart to keep his balance. That's how difficult it was for him to walk. So his Rebbitzin walked into a store. She had to have something notarized. But he needed Rav Palm's, so she brought Rav Palm's, signature. It's like, you notarize it. So the man notarized it. Before she walked out, he said, really, he's supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to notarize it unless he's here. But, for the Rosh Hashiva, I'll do it. It says 15 minutes later, the door opens up, and in comes this carriage. Every step was with such pain you can't imagine. Palm said, not allowed, you're not allowed to. But I want to be here myself. Shouldn't have done it for her. It had to be 100% emes. I remember on Tisha B'Av, when he said the story of Tzidkiyahu, he burst into tears. He said, it's so sad. He was warned. He could have helped himself. He didn't listen to Yirmiyahu Hanavi. It was real. It was so real. Very hard to find people that are real. Very hard to find people that are willing. Heard a beautiful story yesterday. Yosef Zazan Gezint had this list to introduce me to his father, and he told me this beautiful story from Rabbi Yaakov. It was worth going to Lakewood just for this story. He said that now I forget the story we found. Right? No, he said that the Mechutin told him the story that when he came from Australia, remember Australia? But he came many, many years ago. And in those days he came by boat. And he came to Torah V'das. And then when he came here, he was like coming in, and they had warned him, you can come from Australia, but we're still not going to accept you if you're not up to par. And don't tell us, I came all the way from Australia, now you're not going to accept you, so we're telling you beforehand. So after traveling 3 weeks on a boat, and all the different connections, and he's finally in yeshiva, and he walks in, and his kid is like, and Rabbi Yaakov went into Rabbi Yaakov to get tested. He looks at this kid, says, where are you coming from? He says, Australia. And how long are you traveling? 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it was then. So Rabbi Yaakov said, I want to tell you a story. He said, when I came to Slobodka, I walked, he said, I don't forget for how many weeks. We walked, and no money. We climbed, came to the Rabbi, and we had to climb huge gates. He said, I walked into Slobodka, I was, boom. He says, they forheard me, I didn't do well. So I'm not going to forhear you now. You go to the dormitory, we'll make sure you get a good night, good supper, and you get a good day's sleep, and then we'll talk. Don't worry about it. Forget the fact that he put the kid at ease, that he lifted 10 tons of bricks from his heart. But do you realize that Yaakov did it at his own expense? Now, I don't know whether he did or didn't do well by the Feher, because he was considered the most famous Talmidim in Slobodka. But for Rosh Hashiva who wants to make his first impression, who is willing to say, I flunked, because you're going to feel better. You know what that means? It means that the covet wasn't so important to him to start with. So another story was shared with me that there were 2 brothers came, I don't know from where, and they came and they did like a duet in front of Rabbi Yaakov. One of them asked the kasha, the other did the teretz, the other asked the kasha, the other did the teretz. And they came with this real bomb kasha that there's no answer for. And they turned to the Rosh Hashiva, no, maybe you have an answer? This was their faher. And Rabbi Yaakov shrugged. Beats me? No, this is the Rosh Hashiva, right? So they walked out. So he says, remember, his son is there, and he's like a little embarrassed for his father, These 2 boys bested him. So he said the minig was right before Yom Tov. Yom Tov, Reuven used to come visit him. So Reuven came, and they started talking about that Rambam. And the kasha came up, and Rabbi Yaakov said, it's not a kasha, and he's mamish like, wiped the kasha off him, So he went over to his father and said, so father, why didn't you say that to the 2 boys? He says, you didn't see they were so proud they came with this kasha. I just take it away from them. I have a kasha. And so he saw that need. 50 years later, one of these 2 brothers came to be Menachem Avum when Rabbi Yaakov was nifter. And one of them sat down, and the son said, by the way, remember 50 years ago you came to my father for the fair? You remember me and my brother, that kasha, yeah. He says, by the way, 2 days later, Reb Reuven came, and you know what the teretz was? My father said, boom, no kasha. Really? He calls his brother over, Moshe, you gotta hear this, for 50 years we're saying you know what it means? I don't care. I don't care for 50 years. You think, what is this, a game? I'm trying to win brownie points? Prove myself? My job on this world is to make you love Torah. That's my job. I'm not sure I'm doing it at my own expense. I didn't consider myself my own expense to start with. This is my job. Do you understand that these people are on a different planet? But when you reverse orders, when you show the Rabbi Shalom in any way possible, you're making someone else feel better at your own expense. Whether it's a Mesiras Nefesh or Shalom Bayis, whether it's in shul, whatever it is. I am very unpleased about this. And if I give in, it's going to make me look very, very not good. You know what? No problem. No brownie points. It's fine. So the Rebbeinu Shalom says, 200 pounds off for the same shot. That's the thing about El. They told the Chassam Sofer when he was a little kid, he was 8 years old, they asked him this question. They said, what do you need Eidim by a chuppah for? We need Eidim by a chuppah. So he said, why don't you need Eidim? So they told him, Haidas Baldin, Kamei Eidim Dami. That if the Balabas is Moida, you take me to Bezin. And you say, I owe you $100. And I say, you have witnesses? Bezin says, wait, 4 witnesses. Do you owe him the 100 or not? I say, yeah, I owe him. But he doesn't have witnesses, right? I owed him. If you're moida, it's like 100 witnesses. So the guy was moida that he got married, right? I admit, it was a stupid thing to do, I did it. That's the wrong way of saying that, right? Then the guy said, me and my wife were happy for 20 years, then we met, right? A famous Patchen line. My 25th anniversary, I took my wife to Florida. What are you doing for your 50th anniversary? I may go pick her up, right? The Batchanim do this a lot. I remember once sitting, this guy was going on and on about this, and somebody was very upset. You know, you're destroying the sanctity of marriage. And I said, no, I think in a way it's good, because it shows you that unless you work on the marriage, that's what's going to happen. It shows you it has to be worked on. So Kadosh Baruch Hu's mezavik zevugim, that means that every single second, the Maral says, Kadosh Baruch Hu's constantly doing it. Right? Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, his Shalom Bayis was legendary. And they said this is what his Shviger lived in his house all of his life. Shviger outlived his wife. She lived to life. She was high 90s, his wife was nifter, low 80s, right? And there was Shalom Bayis. By her Levaya, well, it's time usually you ask Mechila, he said he doesn't have to ask Mechila because they never had an issue between themselves. So Rav Shlomo Zalman is walking into his house, and I don't know how old Rav Shlomo Zalman was, in his 80s, and they're married for 60 years, and he stops for a minute and makes his payas straight. He says, why? Because my wife is happy that she gets upset when my payas are not straight. I guarantee Rav Shlomo Zalman did that to teach the people around him. Like, if it passes for me, it passes for you. But you know what it means? These people were willing in order to teach, in order to do the right thing. There was no such a thing as me or my kavod. And incidentally, I remember Rav Pam, every Parashas Chayei Sarah used to give a shmooze about Shalom Bayis or about dating. And that shmooze was packed. And he would literally cry with tears in his eyes. And he had one theme, just give. Don't try to defend your honor. What are you doing going to defend your honor and destroy your life? Just give and give. You see, at the end, it'll come around. Let's say the story, the guy's drowning, and then they come, the Red Cross comes and they throw him a thing and they're saying, Mr. So-and-so, take the rope. He goes, so give me your hand. His wife says, don't say give me, that's not a gift. Don't take it. Give. Remember when we had the Siyam HaShas, our Yitzchak, so Rabbi Shapiro says such a beautiful story. He said that he was walking with his father in Yerushalayim, and there was a man that had like a kiosk in Bnei Brak, I remember. And it was after Chatzos, and this guy walks in, he walks out angry. So what's the problem? He doesn't want to sell me cigarettes. He asked him, why don't you sell him the cigarettes? He says, Erev Shabbos, after Chatzos, I don't sell a person who's not Shemesh Shabbos cigarettes, because I think he's going to wind up smoking on Shabbos, not on my Achrayos. Not very good for your business. So the man went on to say that in back home where he lived, forgot the name of the town, he was a butcher, and it bothered him very much that he couldn't learn all day. So every time he sold a piece of meat, he took a few pennies and put it into a pushka. And when it added up to a significant amount of money, he sponsored 2 boys to go to learn a Slobodka from his town. Otherwise, they would have never been able to have gone. And he asked him, how's Arika doing? Turned out this Arika was a Baron Cutler, one of the 2 boys that he sponsored to go to Slobodka. So he said that, Rabbi Shapiro said that his father once told Rabbi Yaakov the story, and Rabbi Yaakov said, and I was the second one that he sponsored to go to Slobodka. Different world. This was a different world. Tonight's also the Yarsev, the Netziv. The Netziv closed Volozhin. The Haskalah came to him and said, you have to have 2 hours of secular studies. And they understood it wasn't just secular studies. It was the Haskalah's way of getting into the yeshiva. He understood what it meant. He said, forget it. Close the yeshiva. And Chaim Berlin, his son, by the yard site, said, he was named after the yeshiva, by the Netziv's yard site said, there's a story in the Gemara that the Kehanim by Chorban Beis HaMikdash threw up the keys. And a hand came and grabbed it. He said, that's what my father did. Chavetz Chaim said he closed down Volozhin and he saved Torah. But you have to be very courageous to close down Volozhin, to close down your own honor to save Torah. That famous story with the Netziv, and he was a little kid, he was very wild, and he overheard his parents talking, and they're saying, okay, that's it, we're not sending him to yeshiva anymore, tomorrow we're sending him to become an apprentice by the shoemaker. He said, no, one more chance, and they gave him one more chance, and the Malamed kept him, grew up to be the Netziv. He said he's going to come up to Shemayim, imagine, he would have come up to Shemayim, who would have been a good shoemaker, Erlich guy, learned down for Yaimi, did his job, who would have come up to Shemayim, and he would be there, after 120 years, and they would say to him, where are you? Where's the Eimek Shala? Where's your sperm is supposed to write on the Shiltis? What are you talking about? I'm a shoemaker. You know what you could have been? I would never believed it. What I could have been. People missed the Nakud in this story. The Nakud in this story is, fast forward this Bizman Hazeh. His parents say, what? You know why I went off the derech? Because my parents said they want to make me a shoemaker, that's why. Right? What is it, right? He could have gone the other way. He could have said, you want to make me a shoemaker? Forget it, I'm getting out of here. That takes a lot of guts when it doesn't go your way. And you're being embarrassed. You say, you know what? I'm going to correct myself instead of trying to even the score. I remember in yeshiva, there was a story. Somebody wrote one of my Rabbeim. It was very sharp. These svarim that he wrote. The Rabbi didn't feel that the svarim were worth printing, or worth writing, or worth repeating. So he said, you know that story with the Netziv? Yeah. He said he would have been a shoemaker. They would have gone up there. And they said, Shemayim, where are your svarim? He says, this guy, he's going to come up with his svarim. They're going to say, where are your shoes? So the emes says that there's a little emes to that also, because everyone has to know who they are. You got to do your best, but you have to know who you are, and you make the best of who you are. But the bottom line is that, you know, the amount that you gain by just saying, you know what, at this second, for my ratings, for my honor, for my prestige, it's A. For B, the guy's going to feel better. I do B, boom, chuck off 100 pounds, 200 pounds. In one shot. It is gone. So, it says, So the Sam Sofer says, what's the bracha? The bracha is Ashetishma. When you have an opportunity in life to give up, life suggests, I give up. If this happened to me, I give up. Instead, you take out the Yeridei and you go, weiter. The Rebbe Hashem says, whoa, that's it. You're becoming Rosh Hashiva. As a bracha shetishma, you're going to have a cheshik to learn like you never had before. As a bracha, that at that moment in your life when it's the most difficult to listen, if you listen, asher tishmu, it's going to become so sweet. It's going to become so geschmack. And unfortunately, it works the other way around as well. We don't realize what it means. How you're going to look at the scale and say, oh, what's the point? I'm finished anyway. There's no way I can catch up. One good mitzvah changes the whole balance, changes the whole scale. Last year, at about this time, you remember I told you a story. A person, Mama Tzedek, she has a camp for people, kids that have Yana Machla, and I remember it was 3 o'clock in the morning, it was after a fundraiser. It's a tremendous organization. I don't want to mention the name of the organization because I want to suggest this organization, but not that organization, or whatever everyone does is good. But it just, so we went in and she asked me to go in and speak to these 5 girls, all have sheitlach, at 15 years old. You know, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. No. She said, go. I don't know what to say. Go. And I went in, I said a story, and I remember that one of the girls was laughing. And she passed away a week or 2 later. It was not expected she should pass. It was an unrelated thing. And I remember going to be Menachem Avel, and I remember her father saying to me, you know, and I heard that she laughed, like she smiled. Like she left this world with a smile. It gave me like it shook me up. I said, imagine I wouldn't have gone in. We have to do what we have to do. The next day, I was really shaken by this story. I had to do this video, not mamash a comedy skit, but it was supposed to be for kids, and I really was not in the mood of being funny. And the fellow that was in charge of doing this video, I told him the story. And he told me this year, you know what? I didn't tell you this, but last year, he got on someone told him about someone that wants it's in a hospital and needs to want to send the siblings, want to fly them over there to be with the kid, and needs someone to sponsor it. He said, you told me the story, I raised the money for it. We don't realize what we do, how it connects and connects and connects and connects. You know, I was driving, can't go a whole week without a story without my car. So, it's funny, in Australia, everyone asked me if I brought my car. I said, would have been very expensive, business class. Anyway, so like, I had no intention of driving in Australia, this side of the road, that side of the road, like, forget it. Like, so, but I always made the mistake, whenever somebody was taking me something, I walked into the driver's side by mistake, which is on the right side. So they would say to me, you want to drive? I'd say, no. So one guy said to me, you want to drive? So just for fun, I said, yeah. Because no. Too many stories about your car. No, I'm not letting you drive. So no way, I'm not driving here. So I do take care of the safety aspect of the car, by the way. I always have the brakes and the front end check and so on. And the tires. But a tire can go even if it's a brand new tire. So I'm driving. I was in Long Island, got by my mother, on the way back. So I must have hit something on the highway, like a bar that was on the thing. And I heard this huge rip. And my back right tire flap. So I pull over, and I made the mistake. I went into one of these big shops. You always look for the little guy. And they took me for a ride, and I wound up buying 3 tires from them. Don't ask me why. And I don't know how much they charge for the mounting, they charge for lifting it, they charge for taking it off, they charge for everything. So I'm driving back, and I felt like really taken. I said, why am I such a... I don't want to say what. I don't know how much money, $350 for what? And I'm driving, and I said, you know what? It must be, I must have had an assignment about tzedakah, and I decided I'm not giving it, and I began to think, and I said, okay, so it's all b'sher, that's all. I just felt bad about one thing. I said, my stereo, my CD player, one of my kids once put in 2 CDs at the same time. He thought they'll both play simultaneously. So as a result, it was stuck. Couldn't get it out. So I went to the guy to fix it, and he wanted $100 to take out the whole thing and replace it. I didn't have the $100. So I said, for $350, at least I could have had music. And mamish, later I'm coming back from the country, and I was telling my wife the story, and I said, that's it. I got to grow up. This is what the Rebbe wanted, that's the way it is, and gegangen weiter. And there's not an extra penny that gets lost that comes back. And I kid you not, as I'm talking, boing, the CD comes flying out. It was there for 2 years, it was stuck. Okay? It actually happened when my GPS broke. The wire snapped, and it fell against the eject button. But all of a sudden, boom, both of them came out. I said, it's working! We just put it one at a time, boom! So many times when you're mazdik es hadin, and you say, this is the way it is, then life goes on. It says ship captains are big Yirei Shemayim. Why? Because they never know for the next day, which is one of the reasons I hold on to my car, because it's a school for Yirei Shemayim. So I did see an interesting thing in the tire shop, though. In the tire shop, it said like this. The conventional reasoning, when you get new tires, you put it on the front or on the back? Right? From the front. So it says that there was an international meeting, a convention of all the tire people. Truly, they should have invited me to speak because I have the most experience, but anyway. And they came to a conclusion of a chiddush. They now hold, all the Gedolim in Goodyear and Firestone now hold that you should put the brand new tires on the back. Why? And they said such a svara. Svara is that if Chas V'Shalom there's a blowout, you don't have enough tread, at least in the front you could control it. But in the back you're totally out of control. You're totally at the mercy of the tire. That's the svara. So what's the Musa Haskell? As bad as it is, as long as you're alive you can still control. You can still, before Rosh Hashanah, you can still turn things around. Things can change. Things can change. I had this machshava, and once so the Minchas Elazar brings that you can make a shliach to toivel for you in a mikveh if you can't. Not mamash lahalacha, you should be able to go into the Beis HaMikdash, but in concept there is such a thing. The Tzelem Arav left in his tzava also asked people to, when they toivel, should toivel themselves for him. So I told this to a friend of mine. So he had a certain Zayda that was very chashiv to him. That Zayda was very machshivnik. He says, every time I toivel myself twice, once for me, once for the Zayda. So he told me that a couple of times he had like some very big nisyonis. And he said, I'm toiveling myself for my Zayda. How could I go now and look at this? There's so many things that we do in life that changes the mahus of who we are. Tonight is the yard site of Rav Fischel Spinker. He was nifter about 10 years ago, I think. I had the schus of being him. He was nifter Friday night. Besides all the stories and the people he was mechazik. So they came to the niggin of Meshoy Chazdacha Friday night. He sang it multiple times. Never did. And afterwards he said it Vatari. So we're not getting any younger. You have to chaparayim. As long as you're alive, you can change the whole equation. And he finished with the words which we mispal for Mashiach to come when we can meet our avos. And he collapsed. Put his hands on his beard and he collapsed and he was nifter at those words. We know what it means. You have to stop and say, I am alive. And if I'm alive, different story. Today's the yard site of Rabbi Avram Matli, was the son of the Chedush Yerim. The Chedush Yerim lost 13 children in his lifetime. The oldest son was nifter when he was 30 years old. He had Einiklah from him. All of his children passed away on Shabbos. He was a very special person, this Avram Matli. When he was in his 30s, he was sick. And Chedush Yerim went over to him right before it looked like he was going to pass away, and he told him, you have a mitzvah to stay alive. So he said that he doesn't have a ben Zachar yet, he wants to stay alive, and he'll name the child Yehuda, Apam Oidus Hashem, and that's when the Sfas Emes was born. So he had 13 children, all passed away on Shabbos. When this son passed away on Shabbos, there's different legends, I don't know, use the word legend, but some say that the Chedush Yerim used to shed a tear every Shabbos for the Simcha of Shabbos, and he did it that Shabbos also. He doesn't believe he was able to do it. But Mitzvah Shabbos, so the Rebbetzin started crying, Geferlich, and he went over to her, and this is what he told the Rebbetzin. He told her that we're going to have one nechama, that whenever someone's going to want to give up that he lost a child, he's going to say that the Chiddushei HaRim had 13 children and lost them. And if we can go on, they can go on. So we have to go on. And the Rebbetzin didn't cry afterwards. You understand the greatness in that? To take my tzar and say, I'm going to help others. It changes the equation. Incidentally, you have Ger, his Eineklich, which is probably the biggest Hasidus today. You see how in the horror of horror, in the darkest of dark, where a person has a kayach to go on, that is appreciated in Shemayim. The equation changes completely. I want to conclude with the following story. There's a person, Chashav, I don't want to say the name. Erev Pesach, they're in the hospital with a child that they're waiting results of a test. Very, very difficult situation. And the test results come back and it's going to be a challenge. And the mother's crying and everyone's crying. And the father starts singing Hallel. Someone comes over to him and says, "You're doing what?" So he says, "Look, it's Erev Pesach. I realize we're not going to have a Seder tonight, not a normal Seder. Erev Pesach matzahs I'm not going to be able to bake. But I always said, Hallel, Erev Pesach, when I bake the matzahs, the one thing I can do is say Hallel." So I said, I'm not going to let my life fall apart. I'm going to say Hallel. Malachim, that comes Rosh Hashanah, Sifrei Chaim, Sifrei Meisim, Menachem Lefenecha, how could you say Hallel? See, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to the Malachim, "Hey, you Malach, you don't get it." Okay? A human being that goes through such crushing nesiyainos in this world, he has every reason to say, what Elul? What's the point of me getting on the scale? It's going to go right through the roof. There's nothing I can do about it. But if you have the koyach to say Hallel, to take out the Yeridea and say, life is going to go on, whether I like it or not. I'm going to do my best. And if I can't be mechazik myself, at least I'll be mechazik others. The Rebbeinu Hashem says, Malach, you can't understand how I do my cheshbainis. You can't understand how I judge people. Because you don't have that Nisayan. Re'ei anoichi noisen lefnechem hayayim. Says the Svas Emes, the son of the Rebbe Ramatcha, the Einekal of the Chiddushei HaRim. Re'ei anoichi noisen lefnechem hayayim. I gave you a power to see the day, to see bracha. It's a siyata d'shmaya. It's a courage that's beyond imagination. But if you really, really want to, you can see it. And once you see it, then it doesn't make a difference how many plates of shont you ate throughout the entire year. The results of the scale up until Rosh Hashanah will be more than satisfactory. It will be Zachreinu Chaim Tov.